Greetings and welcome back to another Perspectives. I had already had an idea of something I was going to speak on for a follow-up, but this is a short addendum follow-up to the last one on the Bardo realm. And I wasn't going to say these words or have this chat, but it occurred to me actually that I wanted to clarify some points. It seemed to me that from some feedback that I had received both in the comments and also offline from some friends, that people didn't quite understand what I was putting across with the poem that I read, and the poem of A New Earth. And they thought that I was putting across my opinion, my beliefs about the new earth, and that's not quite so. What I said is that I would make a summary, a survey of all the ideas that people are throwing around in the Bardo realm. And I'd said that the Bardo realm is a place of a lot of speculations and a lot of false narratives, a lot of hyper realities, pseudo truths, and I did this poem as a kind of collection of a lot of narratives that are out there and thrown all together. And so in fact I was using a bit of irony, and I did say that it was a cheeky little poem. And so so I thought I want to address that, because I think I was taken too literally. And usually I don't readdress people when because when you put something out, people are free to make their own interpretation of that, and I have been misinterpreted also before. But on this one I wanted to address it particularly because it shows exactly how this Bardo Times is operating. It's like we're in a kind of hall of mirrors, and when you walk through this kind of carnivalesque hall of mirrors, all your forms and your body and your shapes and your reflections are getting distorted. And I think we have to be quite careful in this Bardo realm that we're in right now, that things are getting distorted. And on this particular matter, I wanted to de-distort the reflection. And so, and I think that ideally shows that in this time there is a significant distinction between information and understanding, and I think we need to be able to discern between these idea of what is information being put out there and what is genuine understanding. And just to reread from the Bardo Times, not my poem, I probably suggest you go back to the last Perspectives and listen to that poem reading again. And so I'll read a few extracts from the introduction to Bardo Times, the poem, and just to give an idea of these things I'm talking about. This is the introduction. It's not about what we think or know or what we believe we know. It's about how we feel deep within us. We have to feel in order to distinguish between what is the real and what is fantasy. Once we lose this, then we are adrift. We are floating. These are the times we are living in. Times of uncertainty, times of wild speculations, the spectacular, the false, the fear-mongering, the hyper-reality, the high velocity, the simulation, the automation, the mutation, the hoax. Our societies seem to be in free fall. These are the liquid fluid stages, the jumbled moments. This is not modernity. This is something else. We are going beyond history, beyond the once real. There is something creeping in. These are the stories we choose to live within. Those stories that we choose to tell ourselves become the reality. They are giving us false stories, a false reality, a reality that is fragmented, fractured. Can nothing be really true? Just an extract. So I think we have to be mindful of these wild speculations, and I was doing a survey of that. And also, on a related theme, I was going to do a kind of audio recording of me reading the different sections of Bardo Times and put it to a bit of background music, like I did with the essay videos. But I'm thinking now that actually I will do a live reading of it, like I did just then. Woe to you listeners. But I feel it's a difference because there's a different way to receive information, and only recently I've been putting more presence and focus onto the videos, as anyone who follows my work knows that over the last years I've put out a lot of work, written work. And when the mind focuses on the written word, it's not only the content, and my sense is that the written word, especially that I try to transmit and put out, it's not only reading it, the content, but it's a kind of training the mind. When you focus and read through the words and think about the words, and you process the information through reading, it's a kind of training process for the mentation, the cognition. And that training process for the cognition then works its way down to recalibrating one's perception. But of course, in recent years, our modern culture has become very visual orientated, and aural, shall I say, listening, and therefore there's been a great emphasis on putting material across through videos and listening to those videos. So maybe, and it's a different way of receiving information, but the question is, does it have the same capacity to train the mind? Because the focus is different, and the focus generally is that a person is more passive. When you are engaged in reading material, the focus often is more active, unless you're reading a supermarket or an airport book, the ones you pick up on the airport, these romantic books. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but those materials you can be more passive. But in the materials that I put out, when you're reading, you're more active. And when you're listening to videos, generally you sit back and you listen, and you have a visual impact as well as listening, and it's slightly more passive. So maybe I will read live from the Bardo Times, because as well as listening and having the video, you're also perhaps engaging with me, trying to give a presence to the transmission of the material and the words. And in fact, just this morning, a good friend of mine was asking me a question, and he asked me, does it matter, or is it important who puts out ideas? Does the person putting out the ideas affect the ideas? And my response was that, well, yes, it does. It depends what type of ideas you're putting out. But you see, a person can put out ideas mechanically from their personality. And of course, being human, we all operate through our personality. But some of us operate more mechanically through our personality. We engage with the world more mechanically. And the personality is an artificial construct. It's not saying that we don't need it, we do. What I mean is artificial is that the personality is constructed around us from our growing up, our cultural context and social environments, and we have a personality. Whether a personality may be, obviously, it could be religiously and politically and socially influenced. But if we operate and transmit ideas or information purely from a mechanical base, then that is information, it's not understanding. And if we try to operate with ideas and operate with information more from our essential self, then that gives something to the information, hopefully, which tries to push it out of its mechanicalness. Because the world, especially the Bardo times, it's so compelling for humanity to operate mechanically. And we do it all the time. We do it when we're, even when we're driving our car, we do it mechanically. And sometimes we don't, if we think about it, we got from A to B and we probably was daydreaming or thinking about something, or your mind were elsewhere, and you don't realize how you got from A to B. But mechanically you drove the car because we've been trained to do that. We may do our jobs, our daily job. We may just go through the motions, as we say, because we just do it mechanically. We've trained ourselves to do the job, but our heart isn't in it. And that reflects how often we move through our days. The world compels us. That's why it's often being referred to as a machine. The world is like a machine, and quite literally now, with the advance of the machinic nature, or machinic impulse, as I call it, of the world, that it's trying to push human beings even further to operate mechanically. So we need to have an observation, a self-observation of how we are, to try to discern when we're operating mechanically or we're operating lazily through our personality. Because it's very easy to operate through the personality. I do it a lot myself. If I'm in a social environment and, I'm not really engaging with people, I'm just looking around, or, or as sometimes my close friend says, I'm in a different world. I put my personality there in the situation, but I may not be there. I may be, off somewhere else. And sometimes we do it because it's just easy to operate that way. But when we're actually in a situation where I think it's more important to be present, then we need to snap out of our personality. We can still use it as a vehicle, but we need to try to operate from a sense of being, let's say, a sense of yourself, your presence. So all these things, I think it's important that we consider them when we're talking about videos or information or reading, because if we put out stuff mechanically, which a lot of people do, of course, and if we receive information mechanically, then it stays as information. If we can receive material, let's say, or data or information less mechanically, then it helps to shift it into understanding. So these are just some ideas that I'm throwing out on the back of my Bardo Times Postscript. So yes, that's all that's all I just say for now, and maybe in a couple of weeks there will be some Bardo Times readings. If you're, if anyone's interested, I hope so. I will put them out and and continue with my video essays and my perspectives chat. So I appreciate anyone who takes the time to give their attention to the videos I make and these chats. And as I said at the end of the last the Bardo Realm video, which is always important, I said, stay grounded. be in your being as much as possible, and stay well. Until next time. Cheers.